and I am a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. I work a program for codependency, trust, and food issues. And I am excited to be your teacher this afternoon. I am recording in front of a fireplace where I'm pretending that it's nice and calm and serene in my life. Because tonight we're going to talk about serenity. Serenity even in the face of resistance. And it's very interesting in preparation for this teaching how Christ really showed a place in my life I need to work on. And I'm going to be vulnerable tonight and share a little bit of that with you. But I made a realization the other day that I am letting the behavior of my kids, when they act up, they make tough choices and the things that they choose to do, I'm letting it affect my thoughts, my moods, and my behaviors in ways that aren't always God-honoring. And sometimes I hold on to it for days. And I have learned that God allows a lot of do-overs in my life. So that's the way that I really try to approach my parenting. Now, I'm owning a lot of their behavior, and I probably shouldn't be because they're individuals. I can't control them. I am only responsible for what I'm teaching them. And so that has made me really stop and think about how my codependency is coming into play here. And it has me in knots at times, and so I'm not very serene and I'm not very calm to be around in those moments. So can you think of a time or something in your life that is robbing you of your joy or taking away your serenity? Maybe it's changing your behavior somehow. Maybe you're not super proud of it. Well, I can tell you that I'm uncomfortable looking at this. I don't like always looking at things that I have to learn or do something different. I might have even learned that there's a little bit of denial going on in my world. But that's usually true whenever I come up with a new topic that God wants me to work on. And it's hard to embrace that change. But I don't always want to think about it. I don't want to think about the work He's going to do and the changes that are going to be made. But I still have to walk towards it. Because isn't that why we're in recovery? To walk towards it? I got to do this. So I'm going to talk you through how I work through a thought process when something like this happens. Early on in recovery, I learned about the Serenity prayer. You probably know it. Say the first part with me. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And we're going to stop there because that's the part we're going to focus on. I've used this tool many, many times in recovery and working to get on a path of serenity. And it's not easy. So I looked up serenity. What does it mean? It means to have a state of being calm or have a sense of being calm or untroubled. I want that. I want my life to be like that all the time. But I know realistically it's not going to happen. So I have to apply this process when I come up with the tool that I'm going to use. And that particular tool is a Serenity prayer. So I sat down and I asked God, Lord, what would you want me to know about the Serenity prayer in this particular situation? Well, I had to be careful what I was asking for because He gave me an acronym for serenity that I really didn't like too much, but it's interesting what He gave me. And the acronym is for serenity is surrender everything regularly, even though never intending to yield. Never intending to yield? What do you mean by that, God? I really had to look at that. I felt like He was saying to me, there are areas in your life, Trish, where you're stubborn and you're resistant, and you need to look at that. Well, I didn't like to hear it, because that tells me that I have to surrender even though I don't understand, even though I don't see the path to serenity. I'm tied up in my chaos, and I don't know what He's going to do. Sometimes it means I have to surrender those people that I'm enabling or fixing or controlling. I have to surrender them to God because He's got them on His own path, and He doesn't need my help trying to fix them. I know that God has done an incredible work in my life through the recovery process, and I'm very thankful for that. So I choose to trust this process, and every time I have an issue that I need to work on, I go back to what I know about recovery. And I know that if I surrender regularly, I'm surrendering to His change, I'm surrendering to the work He's going to do in my life and what I'm asked to do. And I know that He won't give up on me. And I know that when He asks me to give up something, I have to trust and surrender to that process because I'm asking for the change. But sometimes I'm resistant. And so I've realized that I have to make a change in my mindset. And I have to go at it a little differently. So what I do is I try to act as if, and I try to go forward and surrender this with honesty and just surrender it even though I'm uncomfortable. And even though doing the right thing is hard, or even though I might be facing obstacles, or even though I want to give up when the work gets hard. More importantly, I have to face this with a willingness to change. Sometimes I'm unsure and I don't want to, but I still have to face it and go at it anyway. In that face of resistance, I have to work at surrendering in order to have this serenity. So what does that mean? Surrender everything regularly, even though I may never yield. Well, how do I do this surrender thing? How do I surrender? Well, what I do in my life, it's about a constant relationship with Christ. It's about a one-on-one relationship. And in recovery, it's about having that touch with the higher power. Here at Celebrate Recovery, our higher power is Jesus Christ. And I choose to have a relationship with him. So for me, it's sitting down and praying. And that prayer might simply be, God, I'm ready. I'm ready. It may be, here's my life, Lord. I don't know what to do with it. It's out of control, but it's yours, and I want you to have it. It may be, God, I'm willing to turn my life over to you. Do what you want with it. That's a big, bold prayer for me to surrender that. Sometimes I know early in my recovery I needed something concrete as a reminder or as a way to re-surrender. I would find myself in the middle of a turmoil or middle of a chaotic sit and spin or some sort of emotional turmoil, and I would realize I took my will back again, and I needed it to be God's will. So what I did was I learned this in Step Study, where I set reminders in my phone. I got a little app that would send me these reminders, and I would set up little notes as if they were from God to say, took that will back again, didn't you? Or it's not my will, or it's not your will. And I would just write little notes to myself to remind me throughout the day, and it was amazing how those little notes showed up. But the most important thing I had to do was I had to get personal with him, and I had to get real with him. And I had to know that he was going to be there for me. Because I know if I surrender, and I know if I'm active in this, and I know if I'm doing it well, it opens up a space for God to do some mighty work. It increases that willingness. And the more actively I surrender, I know that it will help me become more willing. And most importantly, it gets me used to the idea that he's making change and he's doing something in my life. God wants us to change. He wants us to become like him, and he wants us in alignment with his will. I need to surrender to his will, and that is so important. And so another way that I do that is I'm reminded in 1 Peter 5, verses 7 and 8. And it says, cast all your cares. That means our anxieties, uncertainties, fears, worries on him, because he cares for you. And then verse 8 is very interesting. It says, be alert and of sober mind, because your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone that he might devour. I've learned that resistance that I'm feeling is sometimes the enemy trying to keep me from the change that God's making in my life. The enemy's deceptive, and he wants to get in the middle of there, and he wants to get in his head. He wants to wrap himself around in the worry and the fear and the chaos that keeps me distracted. And if I let him, he can keep me from the healing that God's intending for me. He can do that for you too. So it's up to us to surrender everything regularly, even though never intending to yield. My stubbornness can get in the way. Can you think of times when your stubbornness or your resistance got in the way as well? Path to recovery is not easy. God didn't promise a life of ease. In fact, he told us we would have challenges along the way. So we have to be active in our recovery, and we have to seek it like there's no tomorrow. We have to overcome the resistance of the enemy. And we have to overcome that and do that with like there's no tomorrow. So here's a question for you. Will you surrender everything regularly, even though never intending to yield? Remember, to not make a choice is to make a choice. What are you not willing to do for your recovery? Tonight, we're going to have a chance at the end of this to sign up for meetings where we can talk openly in open share groups. Please feel free to comment down below and put "Count Me In," and someone will send you a link to get you on a group tonight. It's been a joy being your teacher. Have a great and blessed evening. Good night, everyone.